Hi everyone, welcome for joining. So I'm going to get going and just do a little brief introduction. So thank you for everybody for coming today. My name is Catherine and I run Bristol Child Parent Support, um, which helps parents and children with sleep and difficulties. So my background is that I've worked in CAMS for 19 years as inpatient, outpatient with children from the age of 4 to 18, and also consultation with professionals. And before that, I worked in adult services. So I've done 31 years, which is a long time. So I want to kind of bring to you everything that I've learned and integrated today for brain changing parenting. So I hope you can enjoy a little bit about learning about the brain, and then simply for you to understand what kind of things that you can do to help your parenting. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be sharing some simple neuroscience, the fight, flight or freeze response and stress response, especially what might be happening in lockdown now, frustrations and anxiety, and some brain-based parenting tips to help your child regulate, and hopefully some questions. So parenting really is a brain thing. Understanding how children's brains develop gives us an insight into questions parents often ask why. So you're wondering, why does my child do that? Why do they get so angry? Why do they have such big feelings? Why don't they listen to me? And why do I have to say things over and over again? Really, what this is about is actually your child really doesn't know when you ask them things. Young children have a really limited ability to think and to be reasoned with. They can't link their feelings and thoughts and behavior in their early years. So they can't put it all together. So they don't know. And the sections of the brain, the upstairs brain responsible for these areas, is not switched on until 5 or 6. So for all those who've got younger children, they're going to actually really struggle to know why they might be feeling what. So for this reason, why children are much more in downstairs brain, they show their feelings through behavior. And this is due to the lack of development in the emotional brain. So they might have sleeping issues, they might have feeding issues and toileting difficulties. They might have separation anxiety, which is normal, as well as nighttime fears. They'll show their anxiety through sore tummies and headaches or safety behaviors. And what I mean by that is that they do things in order to help them to feel safe. So they might, if they've got nighttime fears, they might kind of put their toys out and have a certain routine, or they might switch lights on or things like that. They might be more angry or have tantrums or aggression, or they might be more wired or withdrawn. And so it's important to think that children show their feelings through their behavior. So try to look to the root of all the situations. What are they telling me? What is this behavior telling me? And are they worried? And so we're all born to feel all these emotions. So survival is predicted on the avoidance of pain and repetition of pleasure. So we're hardwired for emotions such as joy, anger or fear, distress and surprise. When they're rolling around in rage, they're going limbic. Try not to think of it or take it as personally. It is really a brain thing. So lots of people sort of ask me, what is it? Is it nurture or nature? Well, it is both. Genes and environment interact at every step of a brain development and play different roles. So genes are largely responsible for the basic wiring plan of the brain. Experience is responsible for the fine-tuning and strengthening connections within the brain. So it's a bit like right now we're not sure what genes are switched on or off and what can happen. Epigenetics. So we're all born with lots of stuff, which much more than we actually need. So your baby's going to be born with loads, 100 million neurons, billion neurons. And so we talk about the genes and environment and experiences affect the density and connection. And so as children grow and develop, some are pruned, constantly changes, and it's called plasticity. And this reduces as we get older. So what we're really keen on doing is making those connections fire so that your children can start to develop those higher brain upstairs capacity. So we call it making sure sort of use it or lose it. And it's a bit like this. So we want to do things to help those connections fire. So what's better is the denser the network, the faster, the more reliable it will be. And it hinges on repetition. So the important thing is for you is that you're able to repeat things Help them to regulate, help them to talk about emotions and feelings. Give them good nurturing and care, which is good for the brain development. So it's a bit like this. The faster that we can think, the faster we can calm down. So intertwined with genes and neurons and all those sorts of things, we've got kind of some chemicals called oxytocin and dopamine. They're within the reward circuit of the brain, and to calm down. So it's things like your child feeling like, I can be safe to be near you and I can remember you and it's rewarding to interact with you. This is from Brain-Based Parenting from Jonathan Balin and Daniel Hughes. And dopamine. Dopamine neurons fire in anticipation of pleasurable interactions with your children. So help everybody have a really good boost of oxytocin. Oxytocin, the sensors are in the amygdala, which I'll talk about later, and it helps you to calm down. So you can give your child a massage, you can give them soothing words. The way that you talk to your child is really important. So just think about that right now at the weekend, how you hug your child. And even for teenagers, they still need their hugs, even though they might push you away. It's really important. So they need you. They need a relationship with you, emotionally responsive parenting, which will help to fire those connections in those emotional brain. And they need you to develop trust. So let's look at that emotional brain. This is a really good website, Beacon House, and I really like what they've done in the brain. So we call it kind of triune, that's the old-fashioned name. So different areas of the brain are developed at different times, and they develop bottom up, top down. And, they do sort of sideways and things like that. But remember, not every child's brain develops at the same time. So this is just a guide. And I often think it's helpful to think about, as I've said before, downstairs and upstairs brain. And remember, your child is in downstairs brain, and even your teenager might be a bit too. Okay, so the first part is the reptilian, and that comes from invertebrates and reptiles downstairs. And so this is the deepest, most ancient part. It controls basic instinctive functioning and regulation. So if we think about things like hunger, elimination, so that's really important. I see lots of children who are constipated or soil themselves. Breathing, circulation, temperature, sleep is within that, and also your stress response, fight, flight, or freeze. So remember that stress response goes back to sort of fighting something, running away from something, and freezing. The next one is because we're social creatures and have evolved from mammals, so it's been more successful to be in a group. And it's the mammalian brain. This is emotional brain. It's the same as chimpanzees. And this is the brain that triggers strong emotions in our children. They have really big feelings that need to be managed by a rational brain. And it's where our alarm system is, and I'll talk about that. So it's the seat of our emotion and impulse and attachment behaviors. And then lastly, this is what your children are developing, their upstairs brain, the rational brain. It's what makes us human. It gives us thought. And it's those thoughts and those things that can help us to calm down. So it's the frontal lobes, the neocortex, is the newest part of evolution. So it does all things like creativity, problem solving, which is really important, managing feelings, reasoning and reflection, self-awareness and insight, and kindness and empathy and concern. And this takes a long time. So this can take up to the age of 24. So when you're struggling with your teenager or with your younger children, remember they've got a long way to go to make these connections. So just let's look at this. It's quite helpful to think about normal development. So 1 to 2 years, the midbrain is developing. And this helps to engage the motor and sensory experience and how your baby meets the world. You think about it here, it's quite good to look at all these because you can really see the density area in the frontal lobes. 1 to 4 years, the limbic system develops. This allows your children to regulate emotional states, all those fight, anger, flight, anxiety, frustration, care, empathy. 2 to 6, its cortex is developing, grey matter, so myelination. And so this allows abstract thought and the development of executive functioning skills. And then from 7, it starts to really slow down, strengthening pathways to allow better, denser communication, so quicker. So your children, if we just try to think about what the rational upstairs brain is helping, it's helping your child to inhibit their feelings. That means like sometimes stopping themselves from going and shouting or having a meltdown, shifting from one thing to another. So it's been able to start and stop and start another thing. That's really hard for children who are anxious, who struggle with transitions, how they separate from one thing. how to control emotions, how to initiate. And I think this is important for all of us in lockdown, is actually because we're all feeling quite stressed and, you know, we're tribal, we're group, and we're being told to isolate. It might be quite hard for us to feel motivated and to initiate. So well done for being here today. Develop working memory. Children's memory is and processing is quite limited. So remember to tell them slowly when you're giving them a command. I think it's 40 commands per hour, and it can kind of go up if they're misbehaving. So if you give them commands slowly and one at a time, then they're more likely to be able to take it in. Give them time to process it. Next one is planning and organizing. I'm not sure about you, but it's tricky to do planning and organizing in lockdown, and how they monitor their behavior, how they see themselves. So remember, they're learning to do this. So the more stressed we are, the more difficult it is to actually manage ourselves and to do all those things. And it goes back to one of the most important kind of parts in our limbic lower brain. It's called the amygdala, and it's a little almond-shaped thing. It's good for your children to know it's called a guard dog, and its main functions is to sense danger. So it's how we approach something and how we step back from something. And it can detect a threat in a tenth of a second. And it's activated by gaze, and it's activated from birth. It's actually online from birth. And so how you look at your child, you know, the mother to baby, can also help your child to how they feel threatened. So it releases adrenaline, and it to signal the fight or flight or freeze response. So if you think about it, if your child feels under threat, or if we do, we're going to fight, we're going to shout back, and they're going to go, whoa, they're going to have a tantrum, a meltdown, they're going to get angry, they might throw something. Or there might be more flight, so they might run away. A bit like, you know, when we were running as cavemen, running away from wolves, we thought, better get out of here. And freeze is more complicated because that's a complete overhaul where your system totally shuts down. And if you think about situations, you know, where people have played dead, you know, in the sort of shootouts in America, that's your freeze response. Everything just going bang to protect you, life and death. And the security guard, the hippocampus, works with the amygdala, and they're really important how they work together. So they send messages to each other. And if you think about it, it's the hippocampus, which is like a security guard, is going to help the amygdala. It helps the amygdala to tag things, to tag experiences. This is much slower. It's not online from birth, and it's about our autobiographical memory. So be about your children thinking, okay, is this a threat? No, actually, it isn't a threat because I've done this before. Or the opposite, it could feel like, oh, this is an alarm, this is a threat, and the hippocampus hasn't got enough memory to help it to calm down. So it detects through experience, like I'm talking about. Do I need to be worried about this? No, I'm okay. Okay, no, I need to run or fight. When the children have enough experiences that something's okay, it signals the amygdala to release oxytocin to calm down. So for children who are very anxious, it's really important to expose them safely to small bits of threat. Otherwise, they never actually experience managing the amygdala alarm. It will just keep going off. Alarm, 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 alarm. So let's help our children to regulate. So when we can help our children, it's called having good vagal tone. That's like a big nerve called vagus nerve that goes right down from the brain into the gut. So we literally do feel things in our guts. And vagal tone is about how balanced and well the fight-flight response works with the vagus nerves. It's how to calm us down. And so it helps to increase speed and helps determine the good stuff and manage the threats, the bad stuff. And it is actually inherited as well, I found out. So when we have good vagal tone, we can respond quicker. Your children can concentrate better. They can return to a quicker resting state. But if their vagal tone is not working so well, and so their connections aren't denser, you know, and so they'll be slower to respond, slower to resting state. So they'll be taking the meltdowns will take a lot longer to calm down. So what can we do? So I really like some ideas. It's called PACE. How can we really help our children? And I think it's quite helpful. PACE is quite an easy word to remember. And it's from the same book that I taught, Brain-Based Parenting, Daniel Hughes and Jonathan Balin. It's got a lot of science in it, but it's helpful. So what is PACE? So what can you do with your child? You mean playful, you know, hopeful and open. Try not to give your, you know, your child being negative in your mind, like, God, they're such a bad child. Try to accept your child. A lot of times it's really hard to develop acceptance. It's about Whatever happens unconditionally, what they do, you still love them. So separate out the behavior from the feeling. That's really helpful. It's about curiosity, being non-judgmental, not knowing, being really interested in their experience, but more importantly, empathy. So if you can feel empathic, that's trying to understand how your child feels and give it back to them. They feel a sense of being understood and feel like, yeah, somebody knows me and I can calm down then. What other things can really help? So playing. So special time. So it's really good for those sibling rivalries. Some of you were sort of saying about, like a new baby's come along. So children feel a really strong sense of connection when they can count on special time with you. And most of the time we're pretty distracted and locked down if we're working from home and things have gone a bit kind of all over the place. So it just decreases their need to misbehave. Most children, any attention, such as negative tension, is better than nothing. So give them schedule time, put it up on a planner, 10, 15 minutes, you're going to give them your total price, let them control in the play, give them choices within it, it's their time. But don't use screens or do maths or reading or things like that. And more importantly, the sort of play outside of that you do, rough and tumble physical play is really important. All that let's use that seeking brain, let's build a den, let's go on a treasure hunt, let's open up. But more importantly, it's good just to be with your kids, hang with them, especially the teenagers. You might want to watch a film or something like that, or find something that they enjoy and just do it with them. And lots of conversation. But there is some evidence, the sort of conversation. So the important thing is not just to talk to your child, but to talk, not just about dumping language on them, just talk, but carry on a conversation, serve and return. A study suggests that parents should perhaps talk less and listen more. So give yourself a pause, because actually they can't take it all in because their sort of brain's still processing. So the number of adult words they found in the study didn't seem to matter at all for brain function, but what mattered was the number of conversational turns. So you saying something, them saying something, serve, return, serve, return. So how can we be empathic? So it's really important that your children understand what emotions are, not just anger, not just anxiety, but like a whole range of them, and give them simple words, developmentally appropriate words. Because if they can't talk it out, they're going to behave it out. So the actual task is to help them to talk it out, not behave it out. Try and really think about what is going on with your child, like the first slide. What is the root of the situation? What's happening here? What's happening with me? What's happening with them? What is the feeling your child is trying to express? So using language like, well, maybe you might be feeling this, or I wonder if this is happening. Oh, did this happen? Give them back the tone of what they're really feeling as well. Because they're really angry. Go, okay, you're really angry. Don't go, okay, you're angry now. So use the tone, meet the tone, mirror, like the mirror neurons. Talk about your own feelings. Model emotional regulation. So, as somebody was saying earlier, if you're feeling angry and, with the behavior, then tell them, okay, I'm going to need to calm down a bit. Mummy's angry right now. And I'm going to go away and I'm going to I've flipped my lid and I'm going to calm it down and I'm going to come back. And it's good to actually tell your children, this is what we're going to do. Well, be consistent. Remember, separate out what the behavior is to the feeling. And then you might have to give them a limit. Teach them positive self-talk. How can they talk to their emotions? So how can they go, okay, turn down the volume of the anger, turn down the volume of the anxiety. This is for a little bit older children. What can you do to turn it down? Can they move it out, sort of being a turtle, moving into a turtle or moving into something? Some children need to move. So as I was saying, we've got mirror neurons and they're really important for empathy. So it's like, think about it, mirror, mirror. So whatever we do, our child is going to mirror it back to us. So remember, listen quietly and attentively if you can. Remember, we're being good enough, not perfect parents. Acknowledge and validate their feelings with a word. Or if you're struggling, just go, I see, you might be feeling this. Remember, try and think, mind, mirror back. Shape it, give a frame to what's going on. The understanding and mirror the tone. And meet the need. They still might need to have a limit. I think there's been a lot in the press about helicopter parenting, but it's actually for those upstairs connections. It's teaching them to problem solve, making those connections. So saying things like, a 2-year-old might not be able to do this. They might just need 2 choices, do this or that. But what do you need to do to complete your schoolwork if they're struggling in lockdown? How do you think you can clear that up? You know, for a younger child, do it with them. You know, how can you and your sister solve that problem? I mean, a 3-year-old won't be that, but you kind of will tell them, you know, what do you think you need to put on if you don't want to be cold outside? What helps you to feel safe? So remember, all these things is about feeling safe. The safer we feel, the more that we can regulate, the more that your child can problem solve. Think about it in life. They're going to be able to work it out for themselves. Remember, it's 24, so it's going to take a long time. Hold on to that. Thank you for coming. And remember that there's no such thing as a perfect parent. It's just a real one. And your child will be having more issues in lockdown, and so may you. So be compassionate with yourself and them. So remember, lots of things to do for self-soothing, really important this time for you and for them. So lots of sensatory things, maybe some play with sensory stuff, so clay, finger paints, Play-Doh, water, sand, painting, you know, not always using a screen. Being outside, doing rough and tumble play is going to help too, getting exercise. And for you too, you know, meditation, relaxation, helping them as well with that, doing visualization. So I really hope this has been useful, and do follow me on Facebook or book a consultation. And I forgot to say, in the autumn, I'm thinking of running a parent group, so let me know if you're interested. Bye for now.